So it's 1994. We're gathered here today in Uruguay to discuss a new round of trade talks. We've accomplished a lot in the past 7 rounds of talks, and hopefully these will be successful too.
So we've obviously made a lot of progress these last couple trade rounds. We've gotten tariffs pretty well across the board. That's good. What we want to focus on this time, though, is protecting our intellectual property rights from some developing economies that we're worried about encroaching on our intellectual property. And another thing we could focus on this time around is really setting up a good concrete framework for settling disputes, because everybody's got to play fair,
Before we even get to the intellectual property, we, the Karen's group, don't feel as if the trade has been liberalized enough in the agriculture sector. Why is it that the European community, the United States, and Japan have high tariffs on agriculture imports and subsidies to their farm sectors? It affects the countries that trade with them negatively.
I haven't been very active during these talks in the past, but I'm becoming more integrated into the international trading system, and I need to get some of my interests out on the table. I don't really want to have to sign on to this intellectual property agreement that the US is harping on about. Also, my exports are really rising, so I'm trying not to get messed up on that front. I really need to talk to some developed countries to make sure they don't forget about me while working on their big schemes.
Slow down, everyone. As a transitioning country, I really feel that we too are being overlooked. Quit it. In order to make an impact on the development and adoption of international standards, we need to make the gap between the technical and financial ability of countries smaller. Basically, in order to make sure that all the issues discussed in the Uruguay round come to fruition, we need to be part of a world trade organization and not to be bullied around by the interests of big countries. Bro, we out.
Okay, that's all well and good, but we really have to make sure our intellectual property is protected. I mean, that's important to us. If we don't have that guarantee, it's kind of a deal breaker. And again, our agricultural sector is very important, something we have to look out for.
What about agriculture?
Glad you asked. From the beginning of the process, trade firms have played a big role in making open and free national agriculture policies. Basically, we got rid of all non-tariff nonsense. Ain't nobody got time for that. We made access to national markets easier on a unilateral basis, and through a series of autonomous liberalization measures, dude, we transitional economies need our agriculture.
And maybe the Karen's group can help our members think about intellectual property rights if the US, Japan, and European community can think about reducing their imports tariffs on agriculture.
Listen, I'm not sure what the issue is with what you guys are talking about, but I do agree it'd be easier to talk things through if we had a real treaty-based organization, instead of the GATT framework, where it's all very voluntary. If we all signed treaties agreeing to follow certain guidelines, I think it'd be much easier to talk things out.
I guess it could be beneficial if we did have some sort of organization that held us all accountable. I'm looking at you, developed countries. Listen, I've just had a real big debt crisis, and you really need to help me out. If we set up a treaty-based organization, I can trust you to keep your word about liberalizing agriculture and stuff.
I mean, what we want to make sure is everyone gets treated equally as well, but I mean, for us that means no free rides in this new system.
Everyone, slow your roll. I think an organization that would keep us all in check and responsible for our actions would be super chill. You know what I mean? Big or small, every country deserves some agricultural and intellectual property rights protection. You know what I'm saying? And USA, chill out, we get it, you're big.
If we can reduce trade liberalization in both the agriculture sector and the textile industry, we can work out a solution with what the USA is talking about. The thing is, we also want to make sure that the rules or laws of international trade liberalization is enforced. GATT lacked in this area just because it was an agreement and wasn't binding. We should make sure that the countries be tamed.
I'm with the Karen's group. They know what is up. We should set up some sort of dispute resolution mechanism. That way these developed countries won't be able to have such protectionist policies forever.
I like the idea of arbitration. Again, our intellectual property and our patent rights are very important to us. We'd like to see some protection in that respect in any agreement, obviously. But we've made real progress in terms of tariff reduction and preventing backsliding with the GATT, and I think that could really be translated into long-term success if we kind of codify this with a new treaty. Okay, so what have we accomplished, guys? With the new World Trade Organization, we've set up a procedure for punishing countries that violate their agreements now. There's a guarantee that their grievances, they'll be addressed in a set amount of time as well. Lower tariffs are good for us, our exporting sectors are going to benefit, and the agreement on trade-related aspects of intellectual property rights has allayed some of our fears, at least, about protecting our patents in the world markets. So we're very happy about this.
We're also glad about the new arbitration system. Maybe it'll keep you developed countries in line too. As a developing country, Bangladesh has benefited by an active involvement in this round of talks. We want to continue to work to protect our interests in future rounds.
Are transitioning countries happy about the Uruguay round? Yes and no. We got what we wanted, but adhering to the WTO will be challenging. But the good does outweigh the bad. Our trade relationships will be stronger and more trustworthy, and we can cut down on corruption. Go Ukraine!
We're particularly happy after this round thanks to the passing of agreement on agriculture, but we're going to continue to work to ensure that developed countries discontinue the practice of paying huge agribusiness, large subsidies that developing countries cannot keep up with. The agreement has three central concepts. The first is the concept of domestic support, meaning subsidies are classified into boxes, determined by their effects on production and trade. The second pillar is that of the market access, which refers to the reduction of tariff barriers to the trade by WTO of member states. Their concept is that the export subsidies, which require developed countries to reduce their export subsidies by 36% within the next 6 years.